Monopoly versus abundance. What'll it be? Abundance. Distraction versus knowledge. Which do we want? Knowledge. These pathways mark the natural currents of a living world. But they remain blocked today by a solid wall of corporate giants, shoulder to shoulder in the service to a hallucination, demanding full control over our means of survival. It is the sacred duty of the generations that are alive today, all of the generations that are alive today, to bring an end to the colonial era of plunder that was ushered in with Columbus 500 years ago, and the corporate era, which is its latest expression, that has caused so much damage to people and to land. It's not to beg the 1% to become something that they cannot become, but to bring them down. Dismantle their machinery of ecological torture and their poisonous logic of theft, and allow the restorative processes of nature to work their healing powers on our wounded planet. That's what it's about.
As Sam stated, a lot of these issues really arise from our capitalist system. The dominant socio-economic system that is currently in place today is capitalism, and it's a global system. And Monsanto and ConAgra and all these others are just simply another manifestation of this system and how it works. It works to accumulate the wealth at the top for a small group of people, and they dominate society with their influence and their control. And so a lot of what Monsanto is about, of course, GMOs and these harmful chemicals that they produce, I'm not going to go into detail and talk about that again, but what they're about is control and profits. They control the market and they increase their profits. So it's nearly impossible to talk about, you know, one of these issues such as like the environment or GMOs without talking about other issues, which is the financial system, education, government. All these systems, I believe, are in distress, and as humanity, we're facing crises in nearly every area that I just pointed out. So yeah, basically, I just want to real briefly, I'm going to wrap it up here, just tell you a little bit about our group. We're a Marxist group, and when you study Marxism, you learn that society does not always have to be this way, where the lives of the masses are controlled by the few, and society very likely will not always be this way. At some point, the people will move en masse. When you study history, you see this happen time and time again. Look at May of '68 in France. It almost was a full revolution where the workers took control of society, but it fizzled out. It ended because there wasn't the leadership in place. So in order to truly solve this problem, what I believe is needed is a fundamental transformation of society, one where the workers take active control of the key levers of society and ultimately take control of their own destiny rather than sitting back and being passive participants. And what I believe is needed is a society that is rational, planned, and truly democratic in the interests of everybody. And I believe that society is socialism. And if you're interested in learning more about our perspectives and ideas, please talk to us over at the table. And we have sign-up sheets, and you can give us your email address, and you can also take some back copies. We got some papers that we produced called Socialist Appeal with all these perspectives on different issues, and we're trying to get rid of them. We're giving them away. So we've got that information over there, and we've also got a website called www.socialistappeal.org. Thank you all.
All right. Roll up, get rolled on. Step up or I'll find somebody else to put those clothes on. I got the ball. I need someone to go long, set the pick, and watch you take it to the home. That's how we organize. The son of a plan that knows how to strategize. I pencil out my plan just to open up your eyes. If you can't get dirty, then you need to move aside. This is street rebel music. Exhale, breathe life into the movement. This is more than rap, this is a movement. Front line, if you're ready for the movement. This is my medicine, explaining what's evident. Look dog, you have no idea what you're stepping in. Los not, don't die, singing like a concha. Stretch your skin over the rim of my conga, then play you like a bomba. If you mess up my step, I cut my foot off like that Scotty Volga. La verdad, mija, why you looking at me loca? Coming to you live from Michigan, Minnesota. I breathe this ish, put it in my lungs. Inhale, exhale, shape it with my tongue. I lay it on the earth and then bake it in the sun. Seasoning and feeding it and flaking off the crumbs. I speak with depression about the things I've lived through. Put it on the back and rap and giving culture in handfuls. Showing you I'm Indian and breaking the test. To watching elders in my council and washing the vessel. I step to you tall, my inches are solid. I'm watching you fall, cause I hit you with content. Taught you lessons yet you know nothing about me. Last thing that they heard was, give it to them, quote, hands high. This is street rebel music. Exhale, breathe life into the movement. This is more than rap, this is a movement. Front line, if you're ready for the movement. This is street rebel music. Exhale, breathe life into the movement. This is more than rap, this is a movement. Front line, if you're ready for the movement.
Hey there.
Nationwide petition to get money in politics, money in corporations out of politics, specifically saying corporations are not people, money is not speech.
Okay. What is, could you explain, so you want to end corporate personhood, is that,
Exactly.
Is that right? And could you explain to viewers what corporate personhood is?
Corporate personhood is identifying corporations as equivalent. You can have one of those. You can have one. See, this is a person. Mm-hmm. The Supreme Court considers a corporation equivalent rights as this person. Actually more rights than a child. The same rights as me and you, as adults. That's what corporate personhood is, and we're trying to get it amended to the Constitution to correct what the Supreme Court did, so that corporations are entities, separate entities. They don't have any rights to buy politicians, to get involved in politics, get involved in the government in any way. And if the people who run the corporations want to get directly involved, then they get directly involved like any other person. They have one person, one vote. Tax politics.
Tax politics, yeah.
The idea is that if we tax politics, tax political advertising, then there would be a lot less of what's the people who don't like the current political system, how it works. That would be another way of affecting change, to get less manipulation, less media manipulation out there. And this really gets what they want. By getting corporations and money out of politics, you're getting less media manipulation. They can't bribe politicians via their campaign contributions. They can't give it all to the media. They can't set up separate foundations that pretend to be independent, like ALEC. I have an ALEC sign over here.
Yeah, the American Legislative Exchange Council.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can't do all these things. They can't buy all these things. So this does what they want, and they can, if they choose to, they can still give up their vote, not vote. But this pushes us towards a system where what they want is accomplished.
Mm-hmm. And how would this affect something like a lot of people are talk about the free market, like they
wouldn't touch free market other than the biggest corporations, the richest corporations couldn't buy special privileges in the free market. So the free market would actually become a freer market.
Our amendment includes unions, no loopholes, no bull, no nothing. Anybody who does not have a belly button is not exempt from our amendment. No loopholes. We're not against corporations doing business. We're just against corporations doing business in our government. We want a democracy, not a corporatocracy. So in closing, we are growing the good grassroots movement for people who are growing, the good food for the people who are growing good government. We move to amend the U.S. Constitution to say money is not speech, corporations are not people. We demand real food, real democracy for real people. Move to amend, move to amend, move to amend. Thank you.
By their sorceries are the nations deceived. The word for deceived is panao. And it means to be led astray from safety, truth. or moral uprightness. To deceive, to mislead, this is rooted in a word, plane, meaning fraudulence. Organic is the real deal, gang. GMOs are fraudulence. That's right. And the Lord God took mankind and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and keep it. Keep is from the Hebrew word shamar. It means to protect. To protect it. The garden. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden, thou mayest freely eat. This is Genesis 2, 8-16. But of the trees called GMO, thou mayest not eat, for they are abominations and sorceries of Babylon. In the day ye eat of them, ye shall surely die. And the priests reasoned together how they would dominate the market. But the people remembered, and they cried out with one voice, saying, get thee behind me, Monsanto! This is not your garden, it is ours. Be gone!
Hello viewers, I'm standing out here with Dan Feidt of Minnesota NORML, and Dan, you have some information about GMO cannabis and RNA technology. Could you educate my viewers about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I don't have a whole ton of research, but I did go looking around and sort of try to figure out what's going on in the field. Obviously, cannabis has been, bred in traditional methods for many centuries, and so I think the position that we're kind of at is that supporting that is a good idea, and that if we have a more prohibitionist regime around cannabis, like the one we have now, then we're a lot more likely to be stuck with sort of weird GMO, Monsanto style cannabis, basically. And so basically, if cannabis has open licensing, people will be able to make their own, they'll be able to do the organic thing, and basically, yeah, the more control in the system, the more likely it is that people get stuck with weird GMO cannabis that would have more pesticides and that kind of thing. It'd be way better if people can grow stuff organically. But there's a lot of different sort of techniques and technologies that have been talked about. One of them is using RNA interference to kind of, do reverse DNA basically, and then that would could create novel proteins, and that kind of thing. Like as with many GMOs, there's a real risk of creating novel allergens that nobody's heard of, or that have other effects that nobody has really evaluated. So I think that we want to, raise awareness of that, and that's, I think, for an event like today, that's a good thing to a topic to talk about, is to say, look, like there are big universities that are interested in this. University of Hawaii, the University of Minnesota in 2010, the University of Minnesota did a press release that they found the active THC gene in cannabis that basically triggers off the little hairs, and so we want to draw people's attention to that, and certainly as well, it would be good if there is GMO cannabis to have it labeled. Like there is GMO cannabis that's been developed in Canada, Netherlands, stuff like that, using GMO techniques. Then it'd be way better if that stuff was labeled, so people really know what they're getting. If we reach a situation where there's lots of GMO plants going on, then we'd have a very classic, similar to these other situations where GMO pollen would get into organic pollen fields. And so all those kind of things definitely apply to all of this. And so if we can just have a good transparent situation and ideally make it as easy as possible for people to grow cannabis, for whether it's personal, recreational, medical, industrial uses, that's labeled and known, and that the research can be shared and the health effects can be evaluated, and if there are any health problems caused by some weird gene or something, that people can find out about that. But at the same time too, there's also because cannabis, different cannabis species and sort of subspecies have so much variety, there is still a lot of really interesting and innovative different types of growing that goes on, different strains that have different health effects for different people's medical conditions and stuff like that. So not to say that breeding is a bad idea or anything, but we should definitely try to have transparency and be careful with the more exotic types of GMO technology, I think for sure.
Yeah. Have you done any research about, say, like the companies like Monsanto and Syngenta have stake in also big pharma, and what kind of implications that would have on, basically big pharma restricting cannabis use amongst free human beings.
Big pharma stands to lose pretty big. Like they want to, be a kind of chokehold in terms of how healing substances get out to the population. So they want to say, well, we tweak this up a little bit so it's patented. Like for example, Advair inhalers have a little tiny design change or whatever, and now those inhalers are super expensive. They're way more expensive than they were a few years ago. Similar things could easily happen in the cannabis field if we aren't watchful of the fact they might try to patent some little tweak that they throw in there or whatever. Like we know that how those big pharma companies tend to work. They're always interested in finding different ways they can insert like a wedge, a little bit of intellectual property into a living thing, and then maintain control over it and its market. So that's definitely it's a concern. And I think, but I would say too, like this is definitely a topic where I'm hoping people can do more research, kind of like figure out all the citations and everything, because it's a little hard to evaluate everything that's out on the internet right now, like what's up with Monsanto, who's doing what where, and so I'm just hoping that more concrete research comes out, that people can kind of find out more of what parts are in play, because I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dan.
Absolutely. You have a good day.
You too.
Yeah.